Today I want to do a little bit of a teaching on the myth and the truth about fear. Yes, that's right, our good loved fear. So let me start with the myth. It's really important for us to break the myth of fear. And one of the biggest mistakes that I hear and one of the biggest myths that I hear about fear is that we've got to get over fear in order to go and do the thing that we want to do. So oftentimes what I hear is, if I could just only get over my fear, I would do X, Y, and Z. So if you're catching yourself saying that, if you're saying, let me just wait until this fear disappears and then I'm going to go take this step, let me break this myth for you. Most of us, most incredibly successful people that I know, and this is from personal experience, in all the breakthroughs that I've had, I've done it with fear. And the truth is that fear simply means that you're stepping outside of your comfort zone. And so if you're waiting for fear to disappear in order for you to take that step, it's just not going to happen. Most people that are even brilliant speakers that have been in front of thousands of people speaking for many, many years, they are constantly challenging themselves. Either they are stepping into new material that will challenge them and so create that excitement and fear inside of their belly. And really the only difference between excitement and fear is the breath, and that's actually a physiological aspect of this, that you can break away from fear by taking deep breaths into it. But they will say, and I will say this too, that even though I've presented in front of hundreds of people at this point, thousands of people potentially, I am always a little bit scared. And it just simply means that I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone. I'm constantly challenging myself. I'm constantly changing the material that I'm presenting. And it just means that I'm growing. And so if you are scared and you're waiting for the perfect moment when fears are going to just simply disappear, and then you're going to take the step in the direction of your vision, your big dream, whether it's a project, whether it's starting your book or going on this great trip on your own, or leaving a career to start a new career, leaving a relationship or getting into a relationship, really. All of those things will happen alongside fear. And that's okay. So we just have to learn to not put fear in the driver's seat. We just put it in the back seat, we let it be there, we acknowledge that it's there, and we continue to take action steps in the direction that we want to go. So this is the myth around fear that I wanted to break. Now, the truth about fear. So when we use the word faith, I'm going to kind of switch from fear to faith here. When we use the word faith, typically the dictionary description of faith is us believing in something that hasn't happened yet. It's kind of this human quality that we have in believing in something that hasn't happened yet. Now, the definition of fear, the dictionary definition of fear, it's not that necessarily. However, we treat fear in the same way that we treat faith, except that what our expectation of what might happen in the future is actually a bad outcome. So in other words, the truth about fear is that fear is just the other side of faith. It's the same coin, just looks different. Fear and faith require that we believe in something that hasn't happened yet, and it requires us to use our imagination. We have to create in our minds an outcome, except that fear is a bad outcome, is the exact thing that we don't want to happen, and so we imagine in our heads that everything will go wrong, and then we get paralyzed. Whereas faith is the imagination, is the being in the possibility that everything is just going to work out great. I was actually just finishing a personal training session with a lovely woman at Gold's Gym that's been my personal trainer now for a couple of months, and she's leaving that to step into a new career. And she was talking that when she applied for this job, she went into Banana Republic. She went to Banana Republic. She spent $800 on suits and like dress-up clothes in the expectation that she was going to get this job. There was no evidence that she was going to get the job. As a matter of fact, she wasn't even that qualified for the job, and it turns out that she did get the job. And so in that moment, she could have stayed in complete fear. They haven't called me back yet. I'm too old for this position. I don't have the qualifications. But she put herself in a state of believing that it was possible, so much so that she went and spent $800 on a whole new wardrobe for this new position that she's stepping into before she got the yes from this job. And she did get the yes, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing. So I wanted to just break the myth. You're going to step into your highest achievements alongside fear. You just got to learn to hold hands with it. And I wanted to say the truth about fear is that fear is largely you're imagining that there is a terrible outcome on the other end. One of the biggest fears that I hear from a lot of my clients is the fear of public speaking. Most people are terrified of stepping in front of a large audience and speaking. And where is the fear really coming from? The truth is, what is the worst that can possibly happen? If you make a mistake, if you don't say all the perfect things, if it didn't go as well, so what? We're not going to be hung afterwards. Maybe that was the truth many, many, many years ago, that if you screwed up as a public speaker, that you might be hung and shamed in front of society. That is just not what happens to us. So we've got to just recognize that when we are in the state of creating terrible outcomes, then we want to catch ourselves and say, okay, what is really the worst thing that can possibly happen if I step into this? Now, of course, in sports and things that put our body in danger, that's a different thing. We can actually acknowledge that there is a risk. And even then, when we just believe that, hey, I'm going to go and I'm going to try this out. I'm going to try going in a black diamond slope this time and step into my fear. That's how you actually grow in sports as well. That's how you learn to be better at everything in your life. So let's hold hands with fear. Let's say yes to our dreams, and let's just pay attention that really, if you are feeding these thoughts of fear in your head, you can just as well feed the thought of fate. Feed the thought that everything will work out perfectly well in the future. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon.